Welcome back to the Spoonie and Caregiver Life podcast with me, your host, Jordan Banderas. And before we get started, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of the podcast. And let's go ahead and get into today's episode, shall we? Now, I have talked a lot about my wife's depression since I don't understand it and I want to find a way to help her. That's why I'm always researching about this and asking for feedback because maybe you guys know something that I don't know about depression. But the other day I was doing some research about depression in general, and I came across a study from the Boston University School of Health from October of this year, 2021, so just last month, that indicates that the levels of depression are higher than ever before. And I mean, obviously, we have gone through the pandemic and there's so many things going on that it's kind of understandable that there's going to be a lot of depression going on. But right now, the rates are actually climbing to a staggering 32.8%, which means that 1 out of 3 Americans suffer from depression. So literally, it could be you or somebody you know. Somebody in your house. Now, after reading this study, I thought to myself, how come I don't hear more people talking about it? You know what I mean? Like, how come people don't say, like, I feel depressed, I am sad, like something like that. But based on my experience, we don't understand why it happens, and we don't think we have it, and there's also a stigma behind it. The stigma is so big. Like, if you say that you're depressed, people might say like, oh, you're just too emotional. And obviously you don't want to be labeled as somebody that is emotional when you're depressed. That's what I have seen in my own experience. Now, one of the things I want to share is that in my situation, my symptoms of depression manifested as anger and irritability, which is something that I didn't know was part of depression. In my wife's case, her symptoms are sadness, loneliness, and suicidal ideation, which many people think that's what depression is. But as my own experience suggests, that's not always the case. And one of the things that makes it even a little bit harder to get the proper treatment is that even doctors don't understand this illness that eats you alive, and all they can do is give you a prescription that may or may not work, or they usually tell you to go to therapy. My wife has been told that lots of times, and probably you might have heard it from either your doctor or somebody. But when it comes to making the decision about taking the medication or even going to therapy, we usually take the medication hoping that it will cure us or it will give us relief, since we want to feel normal and live our lives. But the problem with medications is that there's just too many, though. You don't know which one is going to help you the best or not, or what are the side effects, And one of the things that I have seen is how hard it is to manage depression with medications, since our bodies get used to it or don't absorb it at all. In my situation with my wife, we had to do a DNA test to see which medication will work the best. That particular test is $4,000 or even more now. So not a lot of people can actually have access to it. So while I was doing all this research, I came across an interview with Dr. Daniel Amen. He's a psychiatrist and a brain disorder specialist. One of the things that he mentioned in the interview is that the doctors are not looking at the only organ being attacked by depression, which is the brain. Now, when he said that made me think and question how depression is handled. Because when we have depression, doctors don't look at our brains. which, according to Dr. Amen, plays a massive part in mental illness, since our feelings, thoughts, emotions, everything comes from it specifically, literally controls our entire bodies or reactions, things like that. And the reason why I like to talk about Dr. Amen, which probably you might have heard me talk about him before, is that he looks at the brain with what is called a SPECT scan, which stands for single photon emission computed tomography. I know it's a big name, right? But the best part with this is that with this test, he looks at the shape of the brain for any injuries, probably something that might have happened long ago. Like in my wife's case, she had a stroke. In my case, no, I'm not saying that this caused my depression, but I have hit my head so many times. When you're a kid, you do so many things, and then you end up bumping your head, and you don't know what's happening in the brain. And also, one of the things that he looks for is if the brain is gaining enough oxygen or enough blood flow to determine if there's a deeper issue than just mental illness. And obviously that makes sense to me because when I was listening to him talking about how a lack of oxygen or blood flow in the brain can cause mental health issues, I was like, oh my goodness, I have sleep apnea, and ever since I got my CPAP, I feel a lot better. I'm not gonna lie, like the CPAP has helped me because now my brain is getting the right amounts of oxygen, Now, one of the things that I have done is that I have asked doctors to run that test for my wife, but they either don't know what it is or the insurance won't cover it. So we run into a wall. So one of the things I always ask myself is, how can a doctor say I can treat depression when they don't look at what is happening in our brains? My answer to that is that they don't understand how to help with depression and are causing the sufferer to lose hope. So until doctors can have access to this type of test, people with mental health issues won't be treated correctly. So if you or someone you know suffers from depression, please understand what you or they are going through may be out of their control, since nobody has looked at the main culprit of depression. So let's just not tell them to pull up their bootstraps or find courage, because that won't help them at all. And it can cause the symptoms to be worse. So what we need to be patient, as you or they may not be getting the best care they need, just like my wife. And that's why I like to talk about this, because like I said, I have seen how hard the treatment of depression can be, and how hard it is to be treated for it, especially with medications, because the medications have all these side effects and you don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes they make you sleepy, they make you even worse, you don't know what's happening. So without getting the right treatments or the right tests, we won't be able to cure depression or even help it at all. So that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about on today's episode. And once again, I'm very glad to hear your feedback. I really, really appreciate it. I'm glad, and I'm actually happy that we're growing more. We have more listeners, more supporters. And it's all thanks to you. So don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. And you can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you want to share your story, you can post it on the community on Facebook, the Spoonie and Caregiver Life community, or you can send it to me anonymously at the Spoonie and Caregiver Life @gmail.com. And I'll leave you like always. Always take care of yourself and have a great day.